co-lead, and she's from AUT. We've got Haruna Suzuki-Kerr, who is from the Department of Physiology at the University of Auckland. We have Gillian McCarthy, who's from the School of Design Innovation at Victoria University in Wellington. We have Marco Schneider, who's from Auckland Bioengineering Institute at the University of Auckland. And we also have Victor Diericks, who's from the Department of Anatomy and Medical Imaging at the University of Auckland. He's currently flying overseas. So he's actually sent us in a little video to sort of talk about his project and the value he's gotten out of the RAP. So we'll play that a little bit later. So how this is going to work is I'm going to invite Denise, first of all, to just give us an overview of the RAP Fund. And then we'll go to each of our panelists and just ask for a quick overview of your project, and then we'll get to some Q&A. So Denise, would you like to start?
Cool, thank you. And thanks for inviting us. And it's really great to be here. And I'm really keen that ECRs and MCRs take full advantage of this funding. My research kind of comes from a clinical neuroscience bent as well. So it's taken me quite some years, and I've been involved with the medtech when it was the medtech core. It's taken me quite a long time to get my head around what is this thing medtech, and how do you kind of use this type of funding, because it's a little bit different from HRC type funding or from Neurological Foundation or anything like that. So it is a little bit different. So I think the value of these types of sessions is really great. I think there's a number of really crucial things that you need to keep in mind. One of those is that the RAP funding in and of itself is funded by NB. So the money was given to the TTM through CMDT to really ensure that New Zealand has a healthy medtech arena, and that we're developing medical technologies that can be used in real practice. So that's the kind of push. And sometimes it gets a little bit mixed up with making money as an idea. That's not the fundamental idea. The fundamental idea is to build an ecosystem whereby medical technologies and health-related technologies can be developed and advanced. And, you know, whatever the business model at the end, it needs to be sustainable. So you can't develop and invent something and then just leave it there and people will use it for the next 10 years because it will break down, it needs fixed, it needs many things. So thinking through that translational picture is really important to the end point. And when I used to think about translation, I thought that meant translating my research that I did within my laboratory into research that I could do on a patient. But it's not. It's more than that. It's bigger than that. And it involves, how do I make this sustainable for other people to use in the future? And it may be that, you know, we have a device that I want freely available for clinicians and patients. So our question is, how do we develop a business model that supports that? So there are many different ways to do it. There are, within the RAP funding, there are three key funding opportunities: RAP 1, RAP 2, and RAP 3. So stage 1, 2, 3. And they're all a little bit different. So in stage 1, this is a relatively small amount of money, between $10,000 and $20,000. That's meant to be for two things. One is to build a team that might be trying to answer a question. So maybe building relationships with people that you don't really know, you've never worked with before, or you think, oh, I need somebody in this area. And actually, if you come back to the committee saying, I need somebody in this area, the committee can also help you find that person, even if you don't know them. So the committee are quite good at helping you make those connections as well. So do mention that in your applications. We are looking for somebody in this kind of area. So it's about building those relationships and about ideation, about creating the first kind of idea. What is this idea? How can it work? So we've just made some changes to the RAP 1 to kind of clarify it. And so those changes are kind of around about $10,000, you might want to think that you're using to do that relationship building, to bring people together into a team, to start the ideation. And then if you've got any other little things that you want to try, so you've had this idea and you go, gosh, shall we give it a go? Shall we sort of make a thing, because it's not going to be too costly. It's going to cost maybe, you know, $4 to make this thing, and shall we try it out on each other? If you want to do that sort of thing, that first very early trialing that doesn't require ethics application. So we're not talking about studies that require ethics applications. We're talking about giving it a go, or any other little thing that would give you any more information about whether your idea is a good idea that can be translated. It still fits. So around 10,000 is for that relationship building, and there's another 10,000 that's available for that kind of, let's give it a go. What can we try? It's really flexible though. So don't get caught up in, oh, we have to do it like that. So if there's a good reason why you would want to structure that spend differently, just be clear about why. Okay, so the people on the committee aren't making the decisions. It's not a tick box. Oh, yes, 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 yes. They've done all these things. It's really about, gosh, what's the good idea and what looks solid. So clarity and explanation are really, really vital. Okay, wrap one. I don't know. Do you want me to go through all of them and then ask questions, or do you want to?
Yeah. Let's do an overview and then we can discuss it a bit at the end. Yeah.
Wrap 2 is a little bit bigger, and Wrap 2 and Wrap 1 require you to have a team that's not just from your single university or your single area. So both of those, Wrap 1 and Wrap 2, require you to have other partners from the CMDT. So that's AUT, University of Auckland, University of Canterbury, University of Otago, Victoria University of Wellington, Callaghan Innovation, and the DHBs. So recently the DHBs have come on board in that, but you can also include other healthcare providers. So it may be a Māori health organisation that you're working with, a PHO, and anybody else, a private health provider. And you can also link in with industry for Wrap 2. Wrap 2 is really about the kind of, we've done some research that indicates that this idea works. Now we want to test it somehow perhaps in a clinical population. We want to collect some clinical data. It's not all around effectiveness though. It's not like the HRC that's trying to look for effectiveness. It's trying to look for, does it work in the system? Does it solve the problem, the clinical problem that you're asking about? Does it look as if it will go on to be a device that will be used by other people? So in this Wrap 2, the potential is huge in terms of the variability of projects that can be submitted for this grant. And again, what you need to be is clear about what you're going to use the money for. And I would say that when we look at the applications, not only in the Wrap funding, but also before that in the medtech core funding, one of the commonest mistakes that people made was not to be really explicit about what they were going to use the money for. So if by the end of the assessment, the assessors go, it seems like a good idea, but I've got no idea what they're going to spend this money on, that's a problem. Okay, so be really clear that you've matched those things up and really clear about what you need and how that will advance you to that kind of next stage. How does it take you on towards translation into real clinical practice? That's around 60 to 80 grand. So it's a little bit bigger of a fund. And one of the changes that we've made to that fund is to put in an encouragement to ECRs to apply for this fund. And that also acts as a reminder to the committee who are looking at it to consider the makeup of the team and to have a kind of a preference, if you like, for those that are coming from ECRs and those that have an ECR in it. What the committee will look for, though, is that the ECR that's in the team isn't just an add-on to kind of do that tick box thing. Oh yeah, they've got an ECR, but hang on, they're in a completely different area. What have they got to do with it? So it needs to look like a real kind of collaboration. So the committee will look very favourably on ECR-led or ECR included. And we will try really hard that ECRs are included in all of them. But at the end of the day, it still has to be driven by that what looks likely to be successful, because we have to meet the KPIs of MB, what we said we were going to do. So that's important for us. So that's RAP 2. RAP 3 is kind of, you've got your clinical evidence. You may not have run the definitive RCT, but you've certainly done some trialing with patients and with other people, and it's looking pretty good. And now you're kind of trying to work out, how do I create the business model, or how do I get IP protection, or how do I get investment funding? So you're kind of sitting more at that end. Or we might have some refinements to do on a prototype, but actually we're also asking these other types of questions. That's around 100,000. And I think one of the key differences is that it doesn't have to have all those team members in it. So sometimes what happens as a project develops along these lines, by the time you get to there, some of the people who were involved at the ideation or the middle stage have now dropped out, and they may be doing other things. It's not their gig to do the, kind of development into commercialization. So they may have dropped out. It may now just be a team from Auckland University or just a team from Otago University. So there's no requirement on who's in the team on that third one. So again, we've increased the flexibility of that one. And at that point, you can, in fact, all the way along, you can indicate to the committee, where do you think you need help? Do you need help in connecting with Maori and Pacifico? Do you need help in connecting with, how do I do a clinical trial? And all those things that are available through kind of what you guys are organising, really, in the ECR and the other aspects of the HCE program. As you can see, I'm not so familiar with that one. Okay, so I'll leave it there, and I'll try and answer any questions that I might. Yep.
Sorry, just to clarify.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. Can the person asking the question please come towards the microphone? Just
Oh,
so
we've got a mic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to double check. So we can be clear. We can repeating. So we can be clear that about
In the RAP 3, you really, in all of them, you need to be really clear about what the money is going to be spent on. How you're actually going to spend the money. So it's, sometimes we'll see budgets that are really poorly justified. So there might be a research officer or a research assistant indicated, but it's not clear what that's going to do and how that takes it towards that kind of commercialization end. So, if you wanted to engage with an IP lawyer, and they're really expensive, so that might be a reasonable kind of thing to do in that stage 3. We need to engage with an IP lawyer, or we need to talk to somebody about marketing and come up with some sort of knowledge about what the market is, or we might need to go to the FDA and we might need to do a search on freedom to operate, or somebody else done this. And again, it's paying somebody to do that, because as researchers, we can go and do a bit of a Google search, but really to do it well, you need somebody who knows what they're doing. So it's at that end where you're looking at the RAP 3, not at looking at clinical endpoints so much. Okay, so that's not what RAP 3 is about. It's about the commercial endpoints, not the clinical endpoints.
Awesome. Thanks, Denise. Really appreciate that. And just for anyone who is wondering, all of this information is also available on the CMDT website under the RAP funding page, and we'll send out all the links to get all of this information as well. So yeah, 3 stages of RAP funding, that's what we need to know. And hopefully everyone can kind of think of a way that they might be able to fit into one of those slots or build some relationships. So we're just going to go into talking to our panelists now who have actually applied and been successful in the RAP funding process. And we're just going to ask each of you to give us a sort of 5-minute max overview of your project and your experience sort of applying for the funding and kind of what you've been doing with it. So Haruna, can we start with you first, please?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share my experience. We as a team have been awarded RAP1 funding. I think it was a March round this year. So the grant's just been activated and we haven't really done anything yet. So I myself, I'm a research fellow in the Department of Physiology, and I'm a very much a lab-based biomedical scientist. And I work in so my research interest is hearing loss. So 1 in 5 to 6 people are affected by hearing loss, and 90% of these cases are sensory neuronal hearing loss. And what that means is that the pathology occurs in the ear organ that's responsible for hearing. Now, the hearing organ is this pea-sized tiny organ that's fused to the skull, and it's really deeply embedded in the head. And diagnosis or understanding what happens in the hearing loss cases is really, really difficult. So for the RAP1 funding, the idea is how can we come up with a device that might be able to diagnose or help us understanding more about what happens in the people with hearing loss as a potential diagnostic or research tool. So the idea itself has been discussed over the last few years with my main collaborator, Associate Professor Frederick von Hosbeek, who is from physics and have a lot of optical expertise in optical device development. But for the RAP1 team, we had so I wasn't awarded by myself, but our team received the funding, and there's 7 of us, including myself. 3 are academic researchers and 3 are clinicians in Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch, and a communication and marketing specialist. And this collective team was really important because our end goal is to develop a clinically relevant device, and identifying the clinical requirement and what kind of information is really helpful for diagnosis and management of hearing loss is the key outcome we hope to achieve with RAP1 funding. So that's the team. And for RAP1 funding, we proposed the 4 activities, and first activities are mainly meetings and workshops, so clinicians can learn about the research capabilities, and we as a researcher can discuss clinical requirements and learn those from our clinical experts. The third activity is a bid writing support. So that's thinking around marketing need and sustainability of this project in the future, thinking towards next step of funding for MB. And then the 4th component, which is the part that I'm most excited about, is the community engagement and consultation, focusing on the Maori community. And as you know, being early to mid-career researchers or lab-based researcher, community consultation is really hard. In that aspect, we've been receiving a lot of support from Keiti Toki Mataora through the Mātauranga Maori module. And we had the privilege of hosting a Maori and Pacific summer students over the last summer, and also more recently hosting a Bachelor of Nursing Maori students. And the obvious next step is to have a more formal consultation with the Maori community, so we can really form our project informed by the community and open to the community. So for RAP1 funding, we've got, I think, about $4,000 or so set aside, so we can hold this hui with Maori community, focusing on hearing device and care, hopefully early next year, and that will give us a lot of information about what kind of device development will be beneficial for the future. So that's our RAP1 funding.
Awesome, thank you, Haruna. It's really, really great to see just the sort of full scope of what you've applied for with that funding. So I'm going to cross now to Wellington. So Gillian, do you reckon you could give us just a nice overview of your project, please?
Kia ora, just checking you can all hear me. Nice, thank you. So again, another collaborative project. So my name is Gillian McCarthy. I'm a lecturer in the School of Design Innovation at Victoria University here in Wellington. So we had kind of recently started a new collaboration and thought, oh, this would be a good fun to apply for. So at ADHB, some of the nurses had reported a problem with what they call restricted extremities. So restricted extremity is essentially somebody's arm or leg or something like this, where we're trying to preserve veins. So processes, things like blood pressure or IV, blood tests shouldn't be done on that limb while that person is in the hospital or in other places, but it was happening. And they were seeing things like surgeries being cancelled because somebody's limb had been used just prior to the surgery. So they, those nurses connected directly with Ara Manawa, who are the sort of in-house design team at Auckland Hospital, part of ADHB. And they connected with Di, who knows everybody. So she came knocking on our door and said, Gillian and Edgar, people in Wellington, this sounds like you. So I think that's probably pretty classic for how things work. So we all got involved and then brought on a couple of PhD students, Lena and Malika, in design from Wellington. And we chose to focus in on chronic kidney disease because we had kind of better access within ADHB to those areas of the hospital, but also there are about 400,000 cases a year. And it's kind of reminded me, as we were applying for RAP funding, being able to quantify things as much as possible was really important to those numbers, you know, how many patients are struggling with this. But there's really little formal reporting and a few other sort of attempts to fix the problem, things like medical alert bracelets, other in-hospital bans that were kind of going around, but they're all a bit tricky. So we've kind of started away on this project, but what we realised, especially in that chronic kidney disease area, is that the impact on Māori communities, as with many other diseases, is so much more. So we know that outcomes for both Māori and Pacifica are poorer. Māori have a higher incidence of chronic kidney disease. They're diagnosed later and require dialysis at 3 times the rate of the non-Māori population. So what we wanted to do with this RAP1 proposal was to really grow our team to have more Māori representation and support. So it sounds a little bit similar to the presentation we just heard. So we've kind of used this to help grow the team. We've been tapping into the HTCP, things like Whaia already, or the Manaki sessions. Been working with Kev as well from IUE to help connect us with Māori communities in Auckland. So what we were doing with the funding was really to create a Māori advisory panel so we can get feedback along the way and input about our research approach, and also help us to connect more with participants, so participant recruitment, especially for us coming from Wellington. And that gives us the money to travel and to have hui in Auckland and Wellington. It also gives us an opportunity to look at what's happening at CCDHB. We realised there were some similar things happening around breast cancer, so different patient groups, but really similar research approaches. So we're trying to connect up across ADHB and CCDHB to see what we can learn from each other. Yeah, so we've also hiring a research assistant. So that was our final thing to help us with this work. So it's been really great to tap into the Māori nursing students as well. And we're looking to work with them across Auckland and Wellington. I'll leave it there for now.
Awesome, thanks. Thanks, Gillian. Yeah, it sounds like some really cool examples already of how this funding is allowing people to really put together the teams to get these ideas off the ground. So thank you. Marco, can you please go next?
Yeah, no worries. So I'm an engineer and I am also a research fellow at the Auckland Bioengineering Institute. And a lot of my work is surrounding musculoskeletal biomechanics, and my PhD, I did a lot of work on osteoarthritis and developing computational models for evaluating kind of different the etiology of osteoarthritis and doing a lot of morphological analysis, finite element analysis. And so we have created a bunch of really interesting tools for clinical use, but unfortunately, it's not being used in the clinic. And so the last couple of years, I managed to put together quite a nice team. We've got orthopedic surgeons, we've got people who are image-guided therapy experts, we have some multi surgeons from the multi orthopedic surgeons, and we've got biomechanists and motion capture experts and that kind of thing. And so really we've been guided by the orthopedic surgeon and the kind of problems that he runs into, and focusing my research more towards that direction. And one of the things that we arrived at was, well, like an ACL reconstruction, for example, like where you place the tunnel is one of the most critical decisions that the orthopedic surgeon can make in surgery. There's a lot of steps in that surgery, but if you place the tunnel in the wrong place, the knee doesn't behave as it should. And so the last couple of years, been doing research into where should the tunnel be, where is it naturally occurring in patient knees. And so it's a little bit maybe different from like RIP stage 1, where you're assembling the team. I had the opportunity to assemble that team prior to the RIP grant. And then when Di, who knows everyone, she came to me and said, okay, but there's this grant and we think it's perfect for you. And I read the guidelines and I thought, wow, yeah, it's a good fit. We've actually already started doing a bunch of work over the last 2 years, and I wanted to trial taking my research in a completely other direction. So we've been developing this surgical navigation system, but I wanted to see if I could do it using a fancy method that I saw overseas, where they use it in laparoscopic surgery. So I immediately said, I'm definitely going to apply for that grant, just sideline it and just keep working on the existing stuff. And then the time came around and I was like, oh yeah, it's due, let's put it together. And I was very fortunate to have already done, I guess, a lot of the team assembling work. So I applied for the stage 2 grant, and yeah, a lot of that money was specifically to go towards taking the research in this new direction, which I haven't actually started yet because it was just awarded in the March round. So we're gearing up, creating all the milestones that we need to reach, which is what's really nice about writing grants, is you really think about what needs to happen and how you need to spend the money. And it's a 12-month grant, so it's a very short time. So there's a lot to do, and yeah, really looking forward to the next 12 months and what's going to happen. But basically, the project in terms of where we're taking it is to use robots, use optical motion capture, and use inertial measurement units to collect the kinematics of the arthroscope and the surgical tools in surgery. Initially, we'll just do it in cadavers and to just record everything that's going on. And that's actually quite a challenge, because if you've seen an arthroscope, it's a camera, but it's angled at 30 degrees and it can rotate 360 degrees. So to measure like what the camera is looking at is one of the biggest challenges that we have to deal with. But basically, we're going to record everything that's going on inside the surgery, including the video footage, and then use that to train a computational model to predict what the scope is looking at, or what the surgeon's looking at. Because the main challenge that the surgeons deal with in that surgery is not really knowing where they are, what they're looking at, because if you've seen the surgery before, there's a lot of like removal of tissue, and so they clear out the space to get a bit of view, and that changes things. So we're just trying to help the surgeons figure out what they're looking at, and then they can drill their tunnel more consistently. So yeah, that's probably it for me for now, but hopefully that gives you an overview of my project and my experience with RIP at the moment.
Fantastic, thank you. Just to confirm, was that RAP2 funding that you?
Yeah, that was the stage 2 funding.
Stage 2, fantastic. Thank you for that. So we've got one more. This is actually a video from Victor Derricks, who applied for the RAP1 fund, and he actually introduces himself pretty well. So I'm just going to play the video. and get into that. Have a quick just, yes, everyone can see this, thumbs up. Yeah, perfect. Okay, here we go.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I can't attend this meeting in person. I'm currently flying to Belgium, and I think at this very moment I would have just have landed in Dubai, so we'll have a little bit of a jet lag. But the next big thing is to pre-record this video. But before I go into a bit more of the details, let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Victor Dirks. I'm a senior research fellow at Faculty of Medical Health Sciences. And last year, I started my own research group that focuses on Parkinson's disease and multiple system atrophy. So over the last several years, I've been looking into how alpha-synuclein, which is the causative factor of Parkinson's disease and multiple system atrophy, how it spreads throughout the brain, how we can quantify this in human brain, how we study this in cells. So my research has been very much lab-based. So one of the things that I have been fortunate to do is to talk to quite a few groups in public, so to engage with on a regular basis and with some patients suffering from Parkinson's disease, multiple system atrophy. I did a few talks for Parkinson New Zealand, which is the biggest organization representing Parkinson's patients in New Zealand, and they're probably the main health provider for Parkinson's specifically. And through these interactions, the one thing that I've learned is that as a Parkinson researcher, I don't really know anything about how it is to live with Parkinson's disease. What are the main problems that people with Parkinson's have? What are their pain points? How it is to live with that? How does daily life affect them? And so on and so on. So, and this is where this grant application came from, where I want to address the healthcare needs of Parkinson patients in New Zealand with like a Pacific and Maori focus as well. So what I suggested in this project is to bring together quite a diverse group of researchers. There's a neurologist in here. There are 2 physios that specialize in Parkinson's and other neuromuscular diseases. There is a Parkinson nurse from Parkinson New Zealand. The CEO of Parkinson New Zealand is in here as well. There's also a Parkinson nurse from Strada, which is a commercial company that provides specific services for Parkinson patients in New Zealand. And there are quite a few Parkinson patients from the different ethnicities. So quite a broad range of people. So what I propose to do here is actually to come together and see what are the issues, because as I mentioned before, I don't really have an idea of how it is to live with it, what are the specific problems that are present in New Zealand. And my aim is twofold. It's either to find something that can direct my research, or the second thing is to find something that is already existing. It might be an app, might be some piece of technology, but it might be something that is either not known to people in New Zealand suffering from Parkinson and multiple system atrophy, or it's not useful for them, or it costs too much. So we want to see what is the problem there, what is the pain point, why they're not using it, what are their biggest needs. So a few years ago, I did a business degree on commercialization and entrepreneurship. And one of the things that stuck there is this book called If You Build It, Will They Come? So the premise is, if you build something as an entrepreneur, will people buy it? Because that's not necessarily the case, right? You need to fulfill a pain point so that people will give you money to like solve this pain point. And as a researcher, when you go down to the bottom line, that's what we are. We are entrepreneurs. We are trying to make people's lives better, because we're trying to figure out what is going wrong, what is going wrong with people, animals, environments, how can we help society in a better way. So in theory, we're all trying to make this world a better place, but we're making a product. But what I want to do is to make a product that is actually also being used. And one of the things that triggered this very much is a story that was told to me by my previous supervisor when he attended a conference for paraplegics. So it was a mixed conference, researchers, doctors, patients, caregivers, everybody gave their talk. Researchers were very much focused on, okay, yeah, we're going to do this, restore the damage so people can walk again. We're very making lots of progress. At the end of the conference, one of the patients was speaking, and she said, well, I don't want you to make us to walk again. That's not my biggest pain point. What I want you to do is to give me back my decency so that I'm no longer incontinent. So the researchers, even though their goals were good, they weren't really solving the pain point, because there's another pain point that is there. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to figure out with this is, are there things that I can't learn from papers? And will these things affect how I do my research? Definitely they will, but will it like also give me ideas to do new research? And one of the things as well is to bring together other people that I will actually continue the research for. It won't be with the entire group, because it's a pretty big group, but it will give me insights that I would never know about. And I think as a researcher, it's important to know what your target is. If it's a disease, you always have patients that suffer from a disease. If it's animals, you know, you can talk to the farmers, what they are doing, or to people that observe them all the time, the environment. You see people living in there. So it's really important to not be disconnected, because even we don't want to be living in an ivory tower. We want to be really close to the problems that we want to solve. So I hope this explains things a little bit. I would recommend doing this. It is quite different from a lab-based science, but it is quite eye-opening. And every time I have a conversation with the different people, it is quite revealing how few things that I know and what other people are struggling with in helping people with Parkinson's. So everybody has their own set of skills, but also set of difficulties that they struggle with. And they're quite different from what we as a scientist struggle with. So I hope this has been useful. And if you have any questions, you can always email me. I'm happy to help out. Thank you.
So I told Victor off for going a little bit over time, but I think his video really nicely highlighted some of the benefits of what he's been able to do with the RAP funding and how it's kind of shaped his research a little bit. So I think we've got quite a few questions coming through, which is really great. So I think we're just going to jump straight into those. It would be kind of helpful, I guess, for the people on Zoom if the speakers, if you guys just jump in and answer. If there's anything sort of specific, I can sort of gauge it to each of you, but let's just start. There was a question that was on the chat that came through. Many thanks for the RAP 123 background. A question about CMDT's help in early networking. For example, RAP 1 and 2 are networks available that are within industry and also overseas, if that seems to be what's needed, or are there networks mainly within the tertiary sector in Aotearoa? Maybe Denise, you might know.
Yep. So within the kind of RAP committee, so when your application is received, and if you're looking for connections, you can mention it in the application. So the breadth of connections of that committee is quite huge. And one of the things that's commonly talked about and comes up is, oh, we should put this group in touch with so-and-so. And that comes up so much. And I think it happens on many occasions as well. And those connections are really valuable. So, this isn't also a grant funding where we go, yes, no, and you get no feedback and no help to kind of make it better. So that's really about the knowledge of that committee. If the committee, of course, if the committee don't know you're looking for a particular type of person, then they can't do anything. But if they don't know that type of person, they'll try and find it. So Di's quite good at looking around and tapping other people on the shoulders to find who would have this type of knowledge. So that's just a way in which the committee operates. It's not a formal mechanism. If you want to get that kind of information before you put your application in, you could also connect with somebody on the committee. You could connect with whichever university you're at, your local person at the university, or come straight through to Di, myself, or anyone else, and we'll just kind of spread the word around. It's a helpful committee, not a judgy committee.
Yeah, I think it's so valuable to be able to get in touch with people who know all the people. And if anyone doesn't know Diana Sue, she is the person that everyone talks about that just knows everyone. So I'm sure she'll be able to help you out. So another question that's come through on the Slido: without giving away any of the details, am I able to apply for RAP 2 or 3 if my group has already received funding from MB for the preliminary ideation study? I guess, Marco, this is sort of your situation. You already kind of had an idea. And maybe Denise, do you have any thoughts about if you've already got prior funding from MB?
Not an issue. Apply for it. There's no problem.
Yeah. And Marco, do you think jumping in straight at RAP 2 there's no issues there?
Yeah, I was basically looking for a fund to fund that project. So it was nice that it just kind of popped out of nowhere.
And again, you can get advice from the committee or your local representative about which RAP funding do you think is appropriate for the project. And sometimes when it comes to committee, people just, the way they've expressed it, it's not quite sitting in the right one. So it's not like HRC. If you don't get it in the right category, they chuck it out and they don't even give you any consideration. We'll come back and say, hey, why don't you do a RAP 1? We think it's at RAP 1. So you'll get that kind of advice, but you could get that beforehand. But if the committee think it's sitting in the wrong group, they'll just suggest that you reapply in the right one.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so the next question is, how does collaboration with community groups or NGOs fit into the RAP 1 funding? For example, Alzheimer's New Zealand, are they considered to be health providers? I guess Victor would have been a great person to talk to about this as well, because he's working with a lot of community liaisons and groups and nurses and all sorts of people. But Gillian as well, do you have any thoughts on your experience in incorporating community groups into your funding?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the technicality. So we already had like a DHB group on board. So they're technically like if we have to have one other partner, we've already named at least one. So if they're additional to that, there was absolutely no problem. Denise might know if it was only the community group, would that be problematic for the rules? But no, we really wanted to involve community groups as much as possible and get to know them in Auckland. So what we've done initially is almost named the kind of mediators, the people who can help us to find those people. And so we're able to name some of the people we're collaborating with, which was really important, but also know that we'll meet more people during that RAP 1 project who will then be important to our project too.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Denise, what did you have to, what are your thoughts on that?
There would probably be some push to try to include another CMDT named kind of partner. So whether it's a DHB or another university or something like that. So, again, you could, if you were connecting with lots of different community groups, you might be able to kind of say, what do you think, guys? Do you think this fits the bill? Again, sometimes it's worth a try. And again, if it gets read and we go, oh, well, actually, we know so-and-so is doing similar stuff, and actually we've got a natural connection for you, that will come up again. I think, if you wanted not to go through the ums and ahs, I'd ask before you put in your application, and kind of have at least 2 of the named CMDT partners to make it an easy kind of call, plus as many community people as you can get hold of, really. They're super valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think the takeaway at the moment is, this fund has the ability to connect you to all sorts of people, and getting in touch is probably the best way to sort of find out
Yeah.
how you can fit in.
Yeah, and I have to emphasize that it is quite different from lots of other fundings. You know, it's trying to help people get funding. It's trying to help them make the right sorts of connections and ask the right questions for this funding source.
Awesome. I'll keep going with the Slido questions because there's quite a few popping up in here. If there are any in person, then the people in person can just let us know, and we'll get on to those too. So the next question is it okay for the RAP3 to indicate that a research team is looking for industrial partners or stakeholders? I think this might also be a Denise question.
Yep, that would be absolutely fine. And it's about how do you propose going around looking? Who could you bring on board that might help you look?
Yeah.
And again, for many of us, you know, we don't automatically know the answers to these questions. So it's about asking questions up front. What sort of person does that? You know, who kind of links you? And often that sort of question can go back to your, you know, uni services or AUT Ventures who know who those people are. Sometimes it's an external consultant that they'll say, oh, this person, Tara, is really good on those types of things, so pull her in. And, you know, the money might go towards funding the cost of that person.
Can I just add? So obviously I'm not at stage 3 yet, but just over the last couple of years, what's been really helpful has been also interacting with your research commercialization managers. So uni services, for example, doing an idea disclosure to them, presenting to them, having them do some of the freedom to operate and stuff. And they often will go, oh, we'll connect you with this other team. They're working on this. And have you thought about interacting with these companies and that kind of thing? So, and then they'll also facilitate that and provide like confidentiality agreements and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so the tech transfer offices can be super useful as well, particularly at that kind of far right side of it all, the stuff that we don't really know much about. That's their thing.
Awesome, thanks guys, this is very helpful. A question, I'm actually going to direct this one to Haruna. How can a basic scientist make use of RAP funding? I think you've probably experienced how you put this team together in your project.
Yeah, I think RAP1 funding is almost exactly the answer to that, to expand and, you know, get out of your comfort zone and start that discussion. And from my end of things, you know, there was a restriction that you can't do any lab work that's restricted by the ethics approval, but that in a way can be advantage too, I thought. So how I view the RAP1 opportunity is that for my future other work, other than this RAP funding, I still need to have a lot of discussion with clinicians in the hearing care field and potential community partners to discuss the use of my basic science anyway. And RAP1 was sort of the opportunity to have some financial support to start that journey of talking more with clinicians and developing that relationship. So I think it's not so much that our basic scientists, you know, how can we make use of it? I think basic science should sort of take that as an opportunity to start that that pathway. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that definitely does. I think Victor touched on that in this video as well, about the value in actually reaching out into a slightly different area of your research to expand the types of questions you might want to ask and help people in the community. So yeah, that really does help. I've just had a note here that we have an in-person question in Auckland. I'd love to encourage some in-person questions. So just pass the microphone around. Thank you.
Okay, I just want a clarification on the, I think in terms of writing a budget for like a HRC grant, you know what you're paying for, right? So for RAP funding, if you're in the stage where like Victor was, where he wants to, or you as well, where you want to actually make a group of like clinicians and other people with expertise, so you can kind of just figure things out. What do you pay for? Like, what does the money, I do that in my own time. So like, what does the money do?
Yeah, that's probably a really good question. So you might imagine that you want to connect with somebody in Otago. So you're going to pay their airfares, and you're going to have maybe 3 or 4 meetings over the year, and you've got 4 people, say 2 in Otago, 2 in Wellington, 2 in Auckland. You want to bring them together, so you might be paying airfares, you might be paying taxis from the airport, lunches, you know, all those things. And if you want to engage in a meaningful way with community groups, you're going to have long enough. You might be giving a cohort, you might be paying for their lunch, you might be doing those things. So for that relationship building, hiring a room, you know, where is it best to have this meeting? Is it best to have it on a university campus, or do you want it in a church hall? You know, if I want to engage with people who live on Waiheke Island, am I going to make them all come here? No, I'm going to go to Waiheke Island and take everyone with me. So it's all those sensible things. So it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it makes sense for the activity that you've decided on, and that's when you write your budget, you can say, oh yeah, that fits into that activity. So of course you need to pay somebody's travel, including participants. If you've got patients or clinicians or anything coming somewhere, you fairly probably need to pay them for their travel time and their travel. So, you know, they may have a cohort for coming there, or if you've got them for a whole day, you might be thinking about a significant thanks, because that's a lot of people's time. I think we also have to value that.
Awesome, great, thanks. Denise, I think you're on the point for a lot of these questions. That's great that everyone's looking to get clarification. Was there anything else in the in-person in Auckland, or we're happy with that? Yeah.
Does that help?
Yep. Cool, excellent. So another question that's come through: if the same team submits applications for RAP 2 and RAP 3 to cover 2 different projects, will it reduce the chances of getting funded for each of the projects? No, in other words, guys, just go for it. Go for it. If it's an initiative to develop connection or neuroscience program in schools or communities with an existing research protocol, can this be part of RAP funding? So I guess the question is about, yeah, bringing in like a school sort of program.
Okay, I'm going to ask what the end product is going to be.
Yeah, so having a good idea of what the outcome would be and what benefit that's providing and what the money's going to be for.
So is the end product of this going to be something that you can then package and take, and other schools would use it? Or is it just a one-offer? Or is it that you want to connect with the schools to build a relationship around something else that's going to come out? But remembering that it's medtech development. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was there a follow-up from Denise in there? Sorry, I just thought. Yeah.
Yes, it's a question that came from here. So it's basically making connections as well as like outreach activities and outreach, and then making connections with schools all across Aotearoa, something like that. That kind of I was looking towards as the end product.
And is there a bit of medical technology in there? What's the medical technology?
So it's not, I wouldn't say like the technology is a medical technology. It's like some EEG technologies that will be used to do the research. Yeah, there is some involvement of technology which is being used for current research, but it's not going to develop any new technology. But it's more of a community connection as well as outreach program.
Okay, so I'd have kind of your eyes on thinking about what the end thing is. So if you think about, this is funded by MB, and what we're trying to do is to grow the medtech infrastructure in New Zealand. Does it tick that box? So can you describe that actually at the end of this, you'll have a device or some knowledge that could be used and at some point given to somebody else and they could use it and it could grow and get bigger?
Yeah, knowledge. I would say more of a knowledge.
Awareness.
Yeah.
And knowledge, probably. Like if you use technology to so young minds, like how the technology operates, basic technology operates, explaining them like how the brain works, having some toys, all the EEGs, EMR that you can use to showcase like, hey, this is how you can recover from the brain, showing them in the tablets, sort of things. So at the end,
so using, if I get this right, using EEG to do something like record brain activity while kids are doing things.
Yes.
Doing whatever.
Yeah.
With the intent that with that you'll have some way of packaging and understanding about what this means. Is the child engaging in the play? Are they using lots of attentional resources, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay, so what you might imagine is whilst the technology in and of itself isn't new, as you package it together to make something that is usable by, who's going to be in there doing it? The teachers, teacher aides?
Yeah, teachers.
Right,
Yeah.
how do you make that equipment usable and understandable by the teachers and teacher aides?
Right.
Because EEG is not easy, and the cap, how are you going to put that cap on the kids' heads when, I don't know that you'd get through my boy's hair. So there's actually a lot of usability issues and a lot of how do you make that into a consumable technology. So I think that fits, but you need to describe it in that way. And I'm really glad you've mentioned that, because that's a really good example of how you've got this research idea. We want to understand how kids' brains are working when they do these games or whatever they do. And so as scientists, that's what we're interested in. But if that's all you write for this funding, it's not going to get funded. And what you have to think about, you have to change your perspective and think about what's it going to be in the future and try to describe it at that point. So I need an easy to put on device that kids will be happy to stick on. Maybe it looks more like the emotive EEG, but it actually fits everyone's heads, unlike the emotive EEG. And that the interface that you're using on the tablet to collect the data is easy to use, and that the AI behind it is easy for how you present it, is easy for the user to understand. What does this mean in the context of me, my job, and this child? So I think that's a great fit when you think of it in that way.
Yeah.
But if you think of it in the, we want to find out how kids' brains work, it's not going to quite make it. It's just about, can you see how, and I think Victor talked about this really nicely, about how you just need to change the way in which you look at it. Cool. Very
Awesome.
nice example. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I think it's a great example of how to just think about this to twist into the RAP funding priorities. I've just got two very quick questions, and I would like to ask our panelists a more general question just to finish off. So very quickly, does RAP 1 or 2 still apply if the research you're applying for has a primary focus on healthcare tech, but looking to expand beyond medtech? I hope, does it make sense?
I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
Whoever asked it, just expand on that one.
Yeah, otherwise, also get in touch and ask, I think is the key here. You can contact us, contact the RAP Fund, and we can.
So I think I'm guessing what the question was here. So if it's about health and wellness and tech, yes, absolutely fine. If that was the question.
And then one more logistical one. Can you confirm that the RAP2 fund call starts in July and the deadline is the 22nd of August? I think all of this information should be online. Is that right?
Yes, 22nd of August.
Here we go. Okay. And now I'm just going to finish
online, so do check it. Don't rely on my slightly older neurons.
Yeah, I think definitely check it online. But just to finish off, I just want to ask our panelists really quickly in kind of one sentence. What do you think, as an early mid-career researcher, what do you think this RAP fund has kind of allowed you to do? What's the benefit? Why do you think people should go for this? Marco, do you want to start? Put you on the spot.
Yeah. So for me, it's to be able to explore, a slightly different direction in my research and answer a question I wouldn't have had the opportunity to answer. So
yeah, it's a great one. Gillian?
I'd say it's really, to connect with new communities that we haven't known previously, and really strengthen that area, and to give us the funds to travel there and actually do it well face to face.
Yeah, it's a great point as well. And Haruna?
Yeah, pretty much the same. So starting a new sort of idea in the project with community and clinical partners together in this process, and also learn how to do it, because it's quite challenging having this multidisciplinary discussion with clinicians. There's so much learning to do, and I think I'm really enjoying that learning process as well.
Amazing. Yeah, I think those are all just fantastic points. This fund is an opportunity for early mid-career researchers to look a little bit wider than what we traditionally do, to see how our research can benefit the communities that we want to help. And this is a really versatile fund that, we've sort of shown with a few examples how if you just sort of twist the way that you look at the question, you'll be amazed at how much of our research is really applicable to this funding. So really encourage everyone to have a look and think about, what opportunities are here for me, what can I get out of it, and apply. It's a great initiative, and we really want to see early and mid-career researchers making the most of it. So I guess just to wrap up, thank you so much to all of our panelists. You guys have given us some really awesome and interesting examples and diverse examples of what you can use this fund you can apply for this fund. Denise, thank you so much for your guidance in clarifying a lot of questions, because this is a very new thing that we're not sort of familiar with, and it's an initiative I think is going to be really valuable for developing this kind of ecosystem of getting research from the lab out into the community. And then I guess just to conclude, remind everyone that, the Future Leaders module, we are here to try and build this kind of ecosystem of early mid-career researchers getting to know each other from different parts of the country, from different areas of expertise. Everything is about collaboration and getting to know each other. And so we would really love to see you in person. We have Health Tech Week coming up, and we've had a great number of registrations. So we're really looking forward to seeing people in person at Health Tech Week. Come and join us and share your research. We have a few more initiatives that will be coming up. There are Whaia Te Tika, Mātauranga Māori engagement workshops that will be released in the next sort of, I think, month or so. So look out for emails about that to get involved. We also have another webinar that will be coming up once we've all recovered from Health Tech Week in September, on the 9th of September. And we really want these sessions to be about topics that you're interested in and that you want to know about. So please get in touch with us if you have something that you think would be a good webinar topic. We're really keen to sort of make these events work for you. So I think that is pretty much everything, but thank you so much for coming, everyone. Hopefully this has been valuable, and yeah, we will see you on the next one. And remember, there's food at these events, so come in person.